My first Chinese textbooks were filled with words I didn't know, which were made up of characters I couldn't read, write, or pronounce. Without an English translation and a lot of guidance from my tutor, I had no chance of understanding what was in front of me. There are even Tang Dynasty poems in my first textbook. I am not kidding you. Basically, I found this way of learning just as painful and boring and ineffective as I did in school. So I decided to drop my textbooks. I've dropped my tutors. Couldn't really afford them anyway, to be honest. And I decided to go for a more modern approach. So I started to delve into apps and websites, things that would help me build my vocabulary quickly, sort of trying to hack the process doing that. And I found some success, but thanks to my obsessive personality, I managed to use certain websites that I could learn 5,000 words. I learned 5,000 words in about 6 months or so using these digital flashcards and mnemonics. And I found it very satisfying. I was building up this vocabulary, all these words in my head. It was going quite well. Throughout this time, while I was building up this vocabulary, I was also spending a lot of time putting a lot of focus on speaking whenever I could. After all, I was in China and, I'm fairly outgoing, so I thought I could, make use of my surroundings and practice my speaking as much as I could. So over this period of time, I certainly improved to some degree, but it was just, I was putting in several hours a day, 2 or 3 hours a day on average, and I just wasn't getting the results that I wanted. So at this point, it was now 1 year in. I had invested a year of my time and I was not anywhere near fluent. I had not done Chinese as I said I would, so confidently, which was a very big hit to the ego, which I probably needed at that time, to be honest. The worst part about it was as well, I had all these words floating around in my head. I didn't really know them, but I sort of did, and I couldn't use them in any meaningful way. So I thought, I know, let's look on the positive side and try and solve this problem. I have the vocabulary now. I didn't, but I thought I had the vocabulary. So I need to figure out how to use these words. What is that? Well, that's what grammar does, right? Grammar is how words are used. So I just need to go and learn grammar. And that became my next, I would say mission, but it's more like my next shot in the dark. When I think back on that, it's quite funny because the whole reason I was in that mess in the first place was I kept relying on my intuition about language instead of actually researching how it's learned. I just kept guessing and guessing. Anyway, this was my next guess. Now, I wasn't technically wrong about my assumption that I needed to learn grammar, but it was the way I went about it, which was completely wrong. So I found a website called All Set Grammar Learning Wiki. Now, I'm not saying this website isn't useful. It's a very useful reference tool. Every grammar point laid out from beginner to advanced, explained in wonderfully clear language. But the way I used it, well, a textbook would have been much more effective.